Okay, here we go. Here we go. Hang on, I got to fix a couple things as always in the beginning. Okay, we are, and I'll tell you who in a minute, everybody out there, we are going to have quite a talk. I have a funny feeling because I have really been taken by this recording of the late works of Schubert. We'll talk about Franz Schubert. I'm speaking with pianist Steven Masi, and we're talking about your 2023 Navona Records release, Schubert, Late Works, comma, Volume 1. So we'll see about that. But anyway, you and I've even spoken a little bit. You're gonna we'll discuss that, how you think you might approach any more. But this Volume 1, which is the late works, and we're talking about the Drei Klavierstücke, D946, the numbers 1, 2, and 3, and then the the stunning, the unbearable, the incredible, the magical, the who knows what in this man's mind, the Sonata number 21 in B flat, D960. I guess at some point it was the number 15 or something. I kind of saw that, but it flew
I
by.
remember it used to be they used to say there were 19 Schubert sonatas. I that's the level that what I remember.
Yeah.
Of course, a bunch have been added. That um, hey, scholarship being what it is.
Thankfully, I'm a conductor, and I always love the idea that I'm not really a musicologist. Of course, I am. I'm a conductor. All of us are. We have to be in our profession. But I must say, I really enjoy looking at things from the point of view of a conductor. And that's usually at multiple sub-basement levels. You know what I'm saying? And here we are. We're going to discuss your recording, Franz Schubert. And I'm doing dates because it's very, very important for everybody to be real clear about. Franz Schubert, 1797, dead on 19th November 1828. So he was whatever that is. Go, somebody do the math, but in his late 20s, as I recall, something like that. A young man dead of syphilis that killed him. And I didn't realize until recent years that the last stages of syphilis are absolutely visible. And
Oh,
so people in the last stage, and these works are in the last stages of Schubert's syphilitic disease and death.
mhm.
I don't remember reading anything, but he could not possibly have been seen in public during this whole period, the last year or so, at all. And I'd like to ask just right off the top, because I suppose I should know, but did he ever even hear this last sonata and the Drei Klavierstücke? Do you
I
have any idea?
see how he could have actually. He was writing them, right up until the time of the
Yeah.
yeah.
So I'm guessing that he probably never even heard these works.
No, I
Uh,
mean, I would think that most of his major works were never heard. I mean, then obviously the
Now that
ninth
you mention it,
was in a, being in his brother's attic.
yeah.
Um, um, I believe it was Schumann discovered it.
You got it wrapped, fish or something wrapped into one of
Yeah,
those
that
screws,
wrapped
something like
fish
that.
in it.
Or at least that's the charming tale. But the truth of it is well taken that he may not have heard much. I do know that he always complained that everything was too slow over
Right.
in the symphony. So he had to have heard some public performances maybe earlier
I
in
think
his
the things
career.
that he heard mostly were the songs.
Oh, that's a very good point. Very, very
I
good
think
point.
the songs were being sung, and they had those evenings, the Schubertiades,
Which,
which
by the
was
way, we're going to get there, but you and your instrument, we'll talk about the instrument that you played on, took me to a salon circa 1828. I mean, that's the kind of quality of sound that is so unique about this instrument that we'll talk a little bit about in a moment. Um, maybe we'd better first let everybody know who you are. I mean, um, you've excuse me, I'm getting old now. I'm having trouble reading. You've concertized extensively throughout North America, Europe, and Asia, and so on. Your 2017 10-disc recording of the complete Beethoven sonatas. You and I've spoken a little bit about that because I hear Beethoven in the Drei Klavierstücke for sure. I think, and they were compeers, really, I suppose, in that area, the early mid 1820s, something like that. Beethoven's dead in 1824 or something. It's off the top of my head, obviously, but anyway, you know what I mean. Influences, more influences. Um, Help, I've lost my track. That's Oh yeah, that 10-disc recording of the Beethoven, and you told me off camera that that's the same. We'll give it away now. The same Hamburg Steinway.
Yes, same Steinway. Yeah.
And we're going to talk about the quality of sound from that Hamburg Steinway. It's not to say unique, but it's a European temperament, if you will, that exactly suits what I was hearing in my mind, which is the early forte pianos, a kind of, as I mentioned to you, a kind of dry sound, a kind of, yeah, I guess dry would be an okay way, but that's all to the benefit of the music and the interpretation. So you took me right into a Schubertiade, if you will, in period, with this recording on that particular instrument. Okay, so we did that. What else? You did a Brahmsiana for
Yep.
Navona Records, and this is a Navona. I never get that correct. Sorry, guys. Navona. Excuse me, everybody. Records company, fabulous. They're doing so much. It's just a terrific bunch of people. I've not met them, but I understand what they're up to. They're fabulous. You're a graduate of Juilliard School of Music,
Yep.
and the school, I should say, more correctly, and you live in New Jersey. With your wife, and who's a clarinetist. I'm a clarinetist. I feel so sorry for you. No, I'm just kidding. I just didn't get along. I preferred conducting. I didn't get along with the clarinet very well. Your wife, Diana Petrella, and your son, Aiden. So I think we've covered the whole family story. But I have one quickie for you, and just we can just touch on it briefly. I did not see anything about how come, what, when, why the piano.
How come?
Well, what? You're 5 years old? You're 10 years
Right.
old? You're
Well, it is a kind of a strange story. I was uh, my parents were, Italians. My father an immigrant, and of course the instrument that they gave me to play was the accordion at
yeah.
at the age of 6, and we we were not a wealthy family. We didn't have a lot of money. And when it came time to buy a new accordion, we actually couldn't afford one. So I was making rapid progress on the accordion, and I love the accordion. Um, but the accordion wasn't the kind of cool instrument then that it
Never
has.
has been. I'm sorry. Never has been all that cool. But go ahead.
you know, we're talking Myron Moore and Lawrence Well, but the when it came time, the teacher recommended, well, you've got to get a bigger accordion because he's making such rapid progress. My mother didn't want to spend the money on a new accordion, but my aunt was able to get a beaten up old Hardman and Peck piano,
Oh,
and
that's
she
it.
moved it into our house. And the next thing I know, I'm coming home from school. My mother is saying, "Well, you're going to be playing the piano." I cried like a baby. I didn't want to play the piano. So, um,
But that's the beauty of parents.
yeah, exactly.
They drive us with whips and chains in the right direction, usually.
In a way, it was a bad reason, but it turned out fine. Now, the reason that I then became interested in the piano was around that time when I had just started taking piano lessons. I was homesick from school, and there was an old movie program on a local television in New York at that time. I lived in the Bronx, called $1 Million Movie. $1 Million Movie would play the same movie for a week, twice a day, And on the weekends, they play it continuously. Well, this week happened to be that old movie with Cornell Wilde playing Chopin.
Yeah,
It's
oh, I
a
remember.
song to remember. Cornell Wilde and Merle Oberon playing George Sand. Totally miscast as Chopin. I mean, Cornell Wilde being this hunk
Now,
of
now,
a
settle down, settle down, settle down. Anyway, the anecdote is
right
that
playing a
that got you,
19
that he got you hooked.
playing consumptive. But wow, that did it for me. I was sold. I heard Chopin, and that was it. That was it. The piano was it for me. I wanted to play the piano. I wanted to be a pianist. I wanted to have that life. And that clinched it. Now, years later, I was on tour and I was playing in Phoenix, Arizona. And there had been a newspaper article about me. And I told the story of how I got started. When I got there was a knock on my hotel room door, and this woman was standing there with a VCR, remember those, the VCR player,
The big ones.
under her arm
Yeah.
with a VCR tape, VHS, whatever they
Oh, I
call
see what you mean. I get you.
it. Yeah.
Gotcha.
And she said, I want you to have this so you can watch it. And it was that movie. And I watched it, realized for the first time it was actually in color. And it
Or
was
did they
great.
colorize it? But anyway,
But no, I think it actually was in color.
aha.
But but so I got reacquainted with the movie. I spent the afternoon watching it. It was great.
Well, that was on while you were on tour, right?
What's that?
That was while you were on tour. You were in Phoenix on
Yeah,
tour of
yeah.
some
She
kind.
just
Yeah.
brought me the thing.
But
And so, but as a child, I fell in love with Chopin, and then didn't listen to anything else. It was just Chopin. That was it. That's what I wanted to do. And
when did Schubert come into the picture?
I filled it out, and Beethoven was next on my list.
Okay, gotcha. Now that makes sense. And then finally Schubert, and again, just to get us back kind of on track here a little
Schubert
bit.
came
Uh,
later.
it's and since I brought this up, I see one of my questions here is that about the revelations that I've had in listening to your performances. First of all, just the even, steady, non-theatrical manner, and that is not saying dull, that is saying exactly right. That's what I meant about being drawn into the salon 1824. I mean, and then the sound of that piano, you just got me on that. And having read about the Beethoven in the dry Klavierstücke, I was hearing for sure Beethoven somehow. And we maybe mentioned that off camera, but I had never quite made any kind of oral, if you will, connection. I don't mean literally, but the idea of how they influenced each other in some way. Or I presume Beethoven influenced Schubert a bit, but they were compares, I think. Am I okay on that? Is it okay? What do you think? Let's look at now the dry Klavierstücke, D946, just as a group, the three, 1, 2, and 3. There's something Beethovenian in there, okay, in those pieces occasionally. Go.
Well, the first one is rather turbulent,
Yeah.
and it is sort of a kind of um, steamy sort of uh, that C minor, uh,
Yeah.
you know, kind of sound. You know, it's not in C minor.
No, I was just looking
It's
at
in
it.
A flat minor.
But it is mine. It's
But,
E flat minor, and then you do E flat major, which is always fascinating. Anyway, number
right,
two, I should
but
congratulate
it
Schubert
does.
on.
Well, why did I say C minor? But it does have that sort of
Yeah.
turbulent, unrestful kind of quality.
Sturm und Drang.
That one is more quintessentially Schubert.
Yeah.
That song type
Yes. Yeah.
of form.
Well, they're gorgeous, and then just so we understand those three were composed in May of 1828, the last year of Schubert's life.
right?
And then the last, the great, the incredible, the divine, even. I mean, I'm throwing out exuberances like I can't believe. But again, your performance and your recording really taught me several lessons that I had never heard before. Anyway, the Sonata Number 21, B flat, D960, was composed in September 1828, and he's dead in November 1828. So we are talking, we're at the very end. And as mentioned earlier, it must have been a terribly lonely, horrible experience that last year. Must have been for him. So there are mysteries in that sonata, in that 21st sonata that we're going to talk about. So I asked you about the Beethoven connection. Thanks, but I had never really. Maybe I'm finally reaching an age where I'm reaching consciousness about certain
Yeah.
certain things.
Well, you think about it, one of the astounding things is that he was 31 years old.
Yeah,
Now you're saying, you know, you wait to record these things because you want to be of an age where you really understand the music, you understand something beyond just um, making an impression or, um, mm,
well,
you know,
it sorry.
and the kind of thing that really takes age to do.
I think so. We're talking maturity, really.
I was almost 70 when I made that recording, but Schubert was only 31 years old.
Yeah.
So you're looking at a man who's done that. Remember what we were like at 31?
Yes, I was an idiot.
You're a baby. I mean, not you. We're babies at 31. And Schubert was writing this music that is beyond belief,
Yeah. And again,
Yeah,
it speaks to the horror
yeah.
that he was involved in his last years, I think, because then you lay bare everything, I presume, in your darkened room. I'm thinking, and the curtains are drawn, and nobody visits, and on and on, just like Beethoven losing his hearing. Everybody
Now,
thought he was
I
just
did not
rude.
get into that too much in terms of interpreting the piece, not to over extrapolate, not to lean too heavily on the personal. You know, was Schubert aware that he was dying? I I don't know. He
Without doubt.
certainly
I just
had,
told I just told you the symptoms were all over his body by then. By that
yeah,
time, they would have
and
had to have
and
been
and,
sores all
and
over
the
his body.
words that people throw around about Schubert, the resignation, the that's a big one. Uh,
Yes.
I'm not sure that that's a factor. You know,
Well,
the,
I think I hear that in your playing because although I think you are kidding us because you're old enough to know the
yeah.
pain, the great pain. But what
But
I'm getting at
about
is
Schubert is
you play very straightforwardly a great deal of the music, and I think that's exactly right. But when you reach some of those moments where we all know something's going on, you dive right in,
yeah.
don't?
Like,
Okay.
well, for instance, I really do think that the second movement should be quite slow.
Oh,
Um, I do think it should be.
yeah.
People, you have to make it work. I mean, you have to make it move. You have to make
That's
it
right.
not
Always
static,
movement. Always there has to
you
always
know.
be movement, or you're in trouble.
But you really do need that sort of um, stately, you know, progression through the keys.
Yep.
That if you can't undervalue that. You can't do that. The thing about Schubert, of course, and music in general, I like music in general that is very nuanced. And with Schubert, you get that in great degree. You never get sorrow without that glimmer of hope and happiness that goes along with it. The real dialectic. I mean, Schubert, you're not going to get just abject sorrow. There's a there's always it's always um, very, very, very nuanced to the point of what is the word I'm looking for? Um, um, it's psychologically complex.
Thank you. I've been waiting for you to go there because I, uh, I sound terribly judgmental. I don't mean to be, but what I'm saying is you understand this music very, very, very well,
Well,
in my view, and from what my mind and my intellect and my emotions heard. So, yes, indeed, as with Beethoven in his afflictions about hearing, there are these happy, out of, the happy symphonies. The number four is happy, stone, pretty much stone deaf by then, all that. But there are deep reasons for
yeah.
that, which we're going to get to with that third movement of the sonata. I promise you, revelation after revelation. And you're going to say to me, oh, well, no, no, I was just playing the notes. Give me a break. Anyway, I hope you don't think I'm being cruel or anything, but
No.
I think you understand much more at all the reasons, at all the levels that you just finished mentioning. Sub basement, deep, psychological. You just threw all those words right back at me, and I couldn't agree with you more in how you have interpreted and played this. So, uh, uh, I, especially at this point at the end of this man's life, there what is sad is really, really overwhelmingly sad, and you register every note of it. Okay, so I'm just giving you fair warning. Let's let's actually kind of skip to the sonata because it's the big, really juicy one.
Yeah.
The, and there's so much to talk about. Let me just have a look. I forgot to kind of underline some of my notes, but I do this stream of consciousness thing. I listen to it and just type, and
Oh,
then go back and try and make some sense of it. And then later I'll swing around, listen to it again to actually write the written review. But I guess I'm agreeing with other critics that I've read about this your manner of performance and also this particular recording. There is just there is this kind of delicious matter of fact to you where you play the notes because you know damn good and well they will do everything that needs to be done, okay? And then there are moments where I swear you're quite clear about these things, the moments of real tension. Um, but elegant, elegant, elegant playing, I must say. I don't see, I'm so anxious to get to the third movement. Let's dance around a bit. I want to go to the third movement. Let me remind all of us out there about the third movement of the Sonata in B flat major, D960, Scherzo Allegro Vivace con delicatezza. I hope there are no Italians in my out there.
well
And
done.
and here's what I heard. Okay, so this actually the preceding two movements are heavy, heavy, heavy. Can you agree with me on that? They are profoundly moving, and we're not going to leave them alone. We'll go back to them. But then, in answer to where we were kind of leading the conversation, um, there's this miracle dance, this completely jolly, gay dance-like third movement, and it's such a contrast in terms of the mood. So I've always asked myself, why? Would you speak to that, please?
Well, a lot of it, I think, is, I mean, from a compositional point of view, is it needs the balance, you know? We
Okay.
need balance. And I think we need something, he needed something in there that was sort of definite, not to set up the circumspection of the last movement. You see?
Yeah,
So, in
I
other
do.
words, the third movement is pretty much straightforward, you know, very colored, very, um, uh, you know, certainly beautiful, but it's a very straightforward movement.
Yeah. And
Very,
it's almost manic. It's so jolly and dance-like compared to
yeah,
the preceding two
yeah,
movements.
right. Again, it's very, very, well, manic's a good word because, again, it's that dichotomy. It's that very happy, But with Schubert, you always get the other. You always get you get the happy, but you the manic, but behind that sometimes
Gotcha.
mitigates the happiness. It makes it sound almost forced, you know.
Got
And
you
then
loud and clear. You're quite correct as far as I'm concerned. Yep.
yeah, and then of course there's the jauntiness of the trio section,
Yeah.
um, and then rounding it out, the ABA.
And just to
Form.
j-
It's a definite minuet scherzo form
yeah.
that you get in that piece. But then that's over, and now you get that wonderful G natural starting the last move,
Yeah. You
where the
were
key,
yeah, gotcha.
you know,
Yes, yes, gotcha.
where the key is now. Where are we?
Yeah, you know better than I do. That's why I was a little bit thrown. But yes, that moment when things are transformed, they are become lighter, higher. Am I in that? Is that G area that I'm
What's that?
thinking of? Huh? Sorry.
Say again.
Well, I'm just wondering. I'm pretty sure I have what your that
The first,
change that you described. Yeah,
first note.
but I want to tell you there's something I just found it here again in this third movement. A rhythmic device that I swear I've never heard before that you use, and it's stunning. Hang on, I'll see if I can describe it. Um, I say, carefree, clever, and coy bits. This dance piece, we're in still this bright, cheerful, dancerly third movement. Love. Oh, here it is. I love some of the dynamics I've never heard before. And there's a thing where I've just never heard it before, like a in a phrase that just makes that. I've just never heard it played that way before, and it just jumps. It's fabulous. Do you have any idea what I'm talking about?
Not really.
Oh, well,
I
anyway, you can take the
have a
compliment,
score in
but
front of me.
but you
I
do
have a
things.
score in front of me to really look at it.
Well, you do things in this movement that I've never heard before. So part of me is asking, is it in the score? And nobody's ever realized how to use this accent. There's a passage area that has some accents I've never heard before, and those accents make all the difference in the world. It's fabulous. So bravo.
Well, the things that, of course, that is a very long movement, and the thing that I always try to do, of course, is heed Schnabel's advice, which is to pay attention to the spaces between the notes.
Thank you.
That's actually more important than the notes themselves.
Yep.
You need to breathe.
Yep, and it reminds me of what I heard throughout the whole album, and I made a note somewhere. It's not quite, but I understand exactly what you said. In my head, I was hearing lots of détaché, if you will,
Uh,
space between notes, and parts of that is just the charm of the manner of playing passages,
right.
and so on. But I do hear you loud and clear about those silences. I don't mean between eighth notes or anything, but little moments, little silences gives the brain a chance to kind of even catch up.
Yeah, yeah. And again, Schubert being a very influenced by the voice,
Yep,
he himself sang.
yep.
You have to make space for breathing. There's no two ways about it. And the I think a lot of times you're not hearing all that much these days of that kind of breathing. That's a older person, kind of thing.
How
Um,
dare you?
it's a very old style of piano playing, you know.
Oh, now I get you. You're talking the Schnabel connection?
Well, I love Schnabel's Schubert. I think I like his Schubert much even more than the Beethoven. I
And,
just love. I mean, unfortunately, there's not a lot recordings of Schnabel playing Schubert. Not enough.
and this is old school. Did you say that a little earlier, that this old school brought over from the 19th century manner of playing?
Well, you know what? I'm not even sure it's brought over by the from the 19th century. I think that kind of thing was. I think one of the things that Schnabel did, in a way, was bring performance practice and take it out of the hands of, maybe it had developed and gotten a little sloppy in the 19th century. You know, Beethoven playing, Schubert playing, and kind of restored it to, let's just look at the score, you know.
I do
Let,
know because
let,
throughout all of my notes on this recording you have made, all I have I probably 7 times I've written words to the effect of performance practice. This
yeah,
sounds to me, I say to myself in my notes throughout the whole album, this sounds to me, as I've mentioned before, like I'm in Schubert's salon, the style of playing, the performance practice, that
yeah,
Hamburg Steinway with its color that is so unique and also so old school, if you will, if we're trying to look back to forte pianos, the sound of a
the
forte piano. So,
space and the taking time, you
uh,
know. And when you're playing Schubert, you know, it's very long. But Schubert was not, you know, we have to remember, he was not Beethoven. He was not looking for economy. You know, Beethoven was the last classical master. You know, he was, his sonatas at the end were very much, well, with the notable exception of the Hammerklavier, which is a kind of him flexing his, you know,
yeah.
his muscles. He's showing off a little bit, but mostly they're much shorter than the early sonatas because he was able to express himself in much briefer, you know, much more concise way.
Aha, that's the classicism
Yeah,
that you're
and
referring to. Gotcha.
never deviating from sonata form.
Even though
That
he does move, Beethoven does.
the limits of sonata form, and done all kinds of adding the fugues and this and that.
Yeah, yeah,
But
yeah.
basically, Beethoven was into one thing: resolution. He was a classicist. He was yeah, had to resolve. There's no Beethoven piece I can think of that doesn't end with a real resolution. Now, then we have Schubert, who wrote these long melodies, which required a long development and space. So to deny, to say, oh, let's hurry this thing along because this movement is too long, well, that's underselling Schubert. How many people have you met in your life who say, you know, Schubert's only recently come into his own as a master of composition,
Hmm.
not just a guy who wrote pretty melodies,
Hmm.
that you see these pieces need to be done.
Now, I understand you quite clearly, except my largest experience has been as a conductor, the symphonies, the Schubert symphonies,
Yeah,
and the record. I don't want to lose us from the subject at hand, but we're in that mire of this whole thing, Beethoven, Schubert, and so on. What I'm getting at is the symphonies are now, I think, from the recordings of the 40s and 50s, which were too slow and
yeah,
boring.
it's love, right?
That's what I meant about Schubert always complaining about the symphonies in particular. They've got to be faster, and as you mentioned, the songs as well. And now where they're pretty much conducted in cut time, if you allow that vulgar expression, and they fly. It's just fabulous. So now we getting back to Schubert. Okay, we've got this jolly third move. I'm trying to move it along here because I wanted to get into the seventh, to the last movement of the piano sonata, because you gave me another revelation and you're going to deny it. I'm sure of it.
Maybe, I don't know.
And it could just be me, having a bad indigestion or something. Okay, but now we're at the last movement of this incredible 21st sonata, the last piano sonata of Schubert, 2 months before he's dead. And I always look at the last movement. It's Allegro ma non troppo, without too much speed, not too fast. Yeah,
Right?
I always think of it as a little bit of a summation of what has preceded and so on.
Right.
Yeah, especially at the end. But in all the performances I have heard over the years, I have, and I'm going to try and describe it. You know what? I hope you know what I'm saying about those intoned single notes at
Yes,
the beginning and then later and still later and so on. I have never thought of them. And you're going to say, "Oh no, no, that doesn't. That no, no, no. You're all wet. It's just notes." But I hear them as the bell of fate. I've
oh,
never heard this movement sound like that when those notes are intoned. And so I'm going to hopefully not have to nail you to that back wall. You're going to tell me for sure that, that is there anything there? That single note that intones over and is like, the bell of, the Grim Reaper or something. What do you think?
well, I think this, whatever helps a performer get what he wants and put that music across is good. You know, that, in other words, you want to go from that point of view, there's nothing wrong with that. I'm not even saying I mean, I agree or disagree with you.
I
I
know
actually,
that. That's what's so
I actually,
frustrating.
but no, I mean, I actually agree with you. But in other words, short of developing a kind of scenario that goes along with the piece, which
Yes.
is crazy. But but anything that you can do, anything you need to do to get that point across of what you want to do, whatever your inspiration is, it's valid.
Yes. But you are avoiding the question, which is this. Is that what you intended? Because in all the times I have heard that last movement, I have never heard that repeating pitch, that, a chime bell, that bell ringing of the Grim Reaper, if you will. That may
Right.
be my thing, but I've never heard it so understandable in that sense. It's there quite deliberately, and you yourself have mentioned earlier, and I think we both agree, really, there's always a sub basement. With Schubert especially, there's always a sub basement, and I just your performance made me hear that intoned note as a death knell, if you will. Okay, you can sue me later.
Whether whether Schubert meant that or another, that we don't know. We do not know that.
Well, we don't know. That's true.
Me, yes, I would have to agree. I mean, I just say I would have to agree that those notes, what I did, let me tell you, it may be disappointing. What I tried to do, I tried to play them using the escape on the piano. I play them, and you can only do this on a recording. You can't do this in live, it's too risky. But taking my arm and playing the note this way, and then kind of coming back halfway. So you get this sort of eerie sforzando. And that eerie sforzando gives those notes a haunted quality. And however I felt about it in terms of context, in terms of storytelling,
Yes.
that's a little that's sideline. Really, what I thought was that has to have a certain sound, and that certain sound is going to be gotten by this manipulation of the keyboard. And it's a great piano,
Yeah.
so I could do it. I would play the note, take the pedal after playing it, and then take my fingers back. And you can do that when you're recording because you're going to get another shot
Uh,
at
hey,
it.
that brings me.
Whereas in a performance live, you might end up with egg on your face and a note that just disappears.
Well, I'm just going to throw this compliment at you once more. I have never heard that note intoned in that manner, which you have just described in great detail. And you also described it as wanting an effect, an eerie, you may have used that word, a mysterious, a something or other, a grim reaper, that's mine, effect, and it worked
Yes.
hugely. So I refuse to let you, say that it was just, oh, I was just fooling around with the instrument and played the note and it sounded pretty cool.
Oh, no, no, I would never say that.
Yeah, no,
I
I'm being terribly rude.
played
But
too.
I feel that you have really given me a revelatory recording of this sonata, let alone the Klavierstücke. So there you go. But we're not
Another
done
thing
yet.
about it is, I love the piece,
Ah, well, that's clear,
and
very
and
clear.
and bottom line, I hate to sound, corny, but the love that you feel for the music really has to come forward in ways that make people want to love it,
Uh-huh.
just as much as you do, you know.
And
That's,
loving something is about understanding it.
yeah.
So bravo to you once again. I'm just laying it in heavy here. I am incredibly impressed with this recording of this particular sonata and of the dry Klavierstücke.
Thank you
But
so much.
you know what? We haven't dealt with, and I want to. And we're where are we? And maybe another 10 minutes, and then we'll hang up. But we haven't. Well, I'm still in the sonata because this is the great mass,
Yeah, me too.
triumphal masterpiece
Right.
of a sonata of Schubert's. And I'm now going to go look at the first and second movements because we touched on them a little bit, but now I want to get into the nitty gritty of them a little bit. And just here's my stream of consciousness compliments to you again. I say this is the first movement now of the B flat sonata, B flat major sonata. I say the opening immediately puts me in a special mood. The pianist plays the rumbling thunder stuff, all that ominous stuff.
Right.
Well, so many pianists go, rah, just make an atrocity of it. You just have it. It's just there. It's just a presence in that even, steady, balanced, beautiful, controlled is too severe a word because it's more than that. Anyway, that playing, and I immediately understood you knew what you were doing here
Right.
about performance practice, as I say.
Well, I
Performance.
wanted to be very, very, very pianissimo. I wanted a really soft, rumbling sort of um, idea that, that G flat. It's actually a portentous note. It goes to G flat later. Goes then to
The
go
whole
down
piece.
to F
Yeah.
minor also. So the G flat is compositionally it's very important.
Yeah. Thank you.
But also
But it tends to be exaggerated in performance, I think, and you don't do that, and
uh,
it's even more effective.
so what I have to say that what I don't think it's important to play that trill all that quickly
Hmm.
because the quicker it is, the louder it is. So to be able
That makes
to
sense.
control it, and now you're really you're at the bottom of the piano. You don't want to build up sound,
Yeah.
you know. So you really have to be careful with the tempo of the trill. You know,
Very, very interesting.
you don't want a crescendo on that trill. That's really bad.
Let me see. I'm just browsing what else I have to say. What else do you have to say about that first movement while I see if I can find anything? Um, I just like the fact that you're over fireworks. You're over bombast. You don't do theatrics. You don't do any of that stuff. It's all there in the music. We can agree clearly. And again, that you have emulated this period performance
Right.
on that instrument.
The piece it's not really necessarily concert hall stuff. It's
Hmm,
it's
well put.
intimate. It's not that it's small in scope. It's a very
Yeah,
large in scope.
yeah.
It's just not dramatic in the way that Beethoven is.
Fair enough. And also, again, back to that salon atmosphere, and that you would never be playing, especially with the forte piano, the huge capabilities that the modern pianist can do. But just that, and how the music, the ominous stuff, those trills, speak for themselves even at a quiet level of volume. They're there. They're a presence. There's no avoiding that presence and so on. So again, beautifully executed, wonderful performance practice.
Thank you.
Anything else about that first movement? Talk about long.
Oh, it's long, and I also, as many people do, as most people do, I took the repeat, um, which makes it really long. Now, there is a performance by Richter. I don't know if you're um, that he played
But I'm a fan.
very slowly.
Oh, really? Even slower? Huh.
They're
Makes sense.
much slower, much slower. It's very famous.
Makes sense, I think, because you
And
are absolutely performance practice slow enough. You get my
it's
drift? You
very slow,
Yeah. Well,
Um,
that kind of leads us, if we're done with that first movement, so we can kind of wind it down, it leads us into the second movement, the andante sostenuto, which is the heartthrob of the whole thing. And let me just read a couple of my stream of consciousness things, and then I'll hand it over to you. Okay, don't raise your eyebrows like that. You're saying, yeah, sure, kid. Okay, I say to myself, so slow, the opening. It's spellbinding.
the what?
Spellbinding.
Yeah.
That slow opening. It's so slow, it's spellbinding. You got that right. Performance practice, especially considering how close Schubert was to death and so on. Very touching, that deliberate, stretched, slow tempo. And again, no theatrics, just the notes with all their built in meaning. This movement is clearly the most personal and sad, and in this interpretation, it's one of the most moving I've ever heard.
Yeah. Oh, thank you so much.
So your turn
Um,
about that movement.
what I tried to do here, it's funny, I'm so uncomfortable talking about myself. I did what I tried to do here was really make full use of the amazing harmony um, journey. It's an overused word these days
Yeah.
that Schubert goes on, and that C major revelatory moment. I
And it
mean,
reaches a tremendous ascension too,
it's
this movement.
set up
Yeah.
so you can't stop at every rose and smell it.
Yeah.
You wait for your moment,
Yeah.
and in that moment, you take your time. You take your time. And that only works if you're not taking time on every little thing that comes along. There's some sacrifice there,
Mhm.
you know, just the 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 sacrifice of going to something larger later, you know. You give up small moments for the larger.
Oh, absolutely true. Very well put. And I think what I have to say at just the last remarks about this, just elegant, not, no, elegant is the wrong word, just deeply moving interpretation of this slow movement. This quiet, resigned performance is shattering.
Thank you. I mean, it's so wonderful to hear that. Um, I, I'm very, very touched by what you're saying. I appreciate this. Thank you.
Well, my process is on the day of, because I'm doing a million other things. I'm going in several directions. So on the day of, everything stops and I focus in preparation for the interviews I have with people. Uh, and so this has been a day with Schubert. I
Mm.
can't wait. And by the way, I only was able, as you know, this is both works are, but the three and then the sonata. It's a lot of stuff to get down. So I only really have heard these movements once.
Oh,
When I go back, because I'll come back in a couple, 3 weeks, maybe, if we're all lucky, to write the written review, I'll listen again. And I'm so curious in my mind to wonder how things will be different on a second hearing, and of course this is my 427th hearing, as we've discussed. But this is just such a recording. I can't tell you how remarkable the quality of everything is, and I mean that in terms of the quality of understanding, the quality of performance practice, in particular, the
Mhm.
quality of the instrument, um, the, the,
This was
the,
great.
and what you do with things. And as I've told you, there are two or three moments that it's hard for me to, throw in words at you. In a couple of the movements that just blew me away. I'm speaking in the third movement, the fast movement of the sonata. Again, whatever, or is it that, or is it the last movement? Anyway, there's a I'll find out how to describe it when I get to the written review. But you do something with rhythm and pulse, and it comes back two or three times, of course, because the passage comes back two or three times. But I've never heard that kind of pulse before, and it's just
Oh,
magical.
yeah. I mean, you know, I look at rhythm. For a long time, I played jazz,
Well, no wonder you discovered that then.
and that kind of did influence me a lot of rhythm and rhythm. And actually, one of my biggest influences rhythmically, and you're going to laugh when you hear this, as a singer, Fred Astaire.
Hang on, I'm trying not to.
The the
You mean in terms of rhythm, Fred Astaire's kind of sense of rhythm?
his sense of phrasing and rhythm in his singing. And the dancing's obvious.
Yeah, yeah, I see what you mean now. Yeah,
That the where he places notes,
thank you. Yeah,
how incredible it is. And it made a big influence on me. Um, Now, how do you relate that to classical music? Well, you can. I mean, music's music, you know.
I think you see things in the score that others don't, perhaps. I think you see things in the score that others may not because of that maybe jazz rhythmic. You seeing what would be on a jazz chart a rhythmic indicator in just the way
Yeah,
the piece is written or something. It
it's
sounds a little
not
obscure, but
necessarily a jazz influence, but it's a open-mindedness about rhythm. That it's not just beats. You know that beats breathe. The important thing is the accent, where
you
you
had it.
put the accent.
Yeah.
You
Well,
know,
you found it, and I'm determined to figure out how to describe it in words. But you found it and I think it's the third movement, or it's and then in the last movement that intoning of the fate bell that
yeah,
never occurred to me ever before hearing it in your performance, stuff like that. So you made, you can imagine how many times I see recordings of the last the last works of Schubert and so on. Um, so I was genuinely, really, really pleased and really, really surprised. And so I think I just want to tell everybody out there, we'll put all this up on performingartsreview.net. And I hope professionals, pianists, will have a listen to this recording. It's very special in very interesting ways.
thank you so
I
much.
think we're about done. Why don't we call it quits? I've been talking here with pianist Steven Masi about his 2023 Navona Records release, Schubert, Late Works, comma, I can't resist this, Volume 1. We'll see how far it goes from there. But we're talking about the Drei Klavierstücke, the D946, numbers 1, 2, and 3, and that was composed in May of 1828, the last year of Schubert's life, and the Sonata number 21 in B flat, D960, composed in September of 1828, 2 months before he died of syphilis.
Mm.
So two of the just the last works of Schubert, indeed, they're stunning, treasures, and they have lots and lots of secrets and lots of sub-basements. And you have done a tremendous job, especially on the sonata, the number 21. I heard things I've never heard before.
Oh,
So congrats.
thank you.
I guess we're done.
Well, it was a pleasure to talk to you.
Well, good. Thanks. I really got very excited today. Honestly, this is
You're a great listener. You've got a lot of you're a musician. You're really no yeah, you're wonderful.
well. Thanks. We better hang up now, or the compliments are going to kill both of us. Anyway, great fun talking with you. Thanks very much indeed. A great discussion about these very important last works of Schubert. Thanks.
Thank you so